Study Session 9, Federal System of Government. Introduction. In this study session, we shall focus on federal system of government. In our quest to discuss the subject, we shall begin our discourse by looking at various conceptual definitions of the term federal system or federalism. We shall also explain other central issues like reasons for and features of federalism. At the end of this study session, you should be able to define federal system of government, identify reasons for adoption of federalism, describe the features of federalism, discuss the advantages and disadvantages of federal system, and differentiate between the federal and unitary systems. Meaning of federalism. The term federation emanated from the Latin word fodus, which means treaty or agreement. A federal system involves sharing of political power among various component units of any state or country, where the central government and regional governments are given varying powers by the Constitution, and each of them has power to have its own laws without relying on the other. The court is the last resort when there is a clash between the central government and regional governments. Several scholars have worked extensively on federalism, and they have come out with different definitions of the term. 1. The form of government where the component units of a political organization participate in sharing powers and functions in a cooperative manner through the combined forces of ethnic pluralism and cultural diversity, amongst others, tend to pull their people apart. Delicate arrangements of this kind, where carefully worked out, provide sufficient room for the coexistence of center-seeking and center-fleeing forces. This is according to Tamuno, 1998, page 13. 2. A device for limiting government power by dividing it between national and various regional governments based in different regions of the country. Federalism, like the separation of powers between organs of a unitary government, is an important instrument of constitutionalism. This is according to Nwambweze in 1992, page 107. 3. The method of dividing powers so that the general and regional governments are each within a sphere, coordinate and independent. This is according to Ware, 1970, page 11. 4. A joint national enterprise in which the center and states are partners, united in a common purpose, and working with agreed policies in different fields of national development. This is according to India Progress Report, 1953, page 1. 5. A system of government in which central and regional authorities are linked in a mutually independent political relationship. In this system, a balance is maintained such that neither level of government becomes dominant to the extent that it can dictate decisions of the other, but each can influence, bargain, and persuade the other. The functions of government will be distributed between these levels exclusively, completely, and cooperatively. This is according to Weil, 1961, page 197. 6. The system of division of powers. A federal polity is a dual government in which powers are divided and distributed by the Constitution between a central government and regional governments. Both the central and regional governments are coordinate, independent authorities within their allotted spheres of jurisdiction. Neither can encroach upon the powers of the other. This is according to Kapoor in 1950, pages 402 and 403. Considering various definitions above mentioned, you may agree with me that federal system is a very effective instrument of governance which enables the component units to have political power independent of the central political authority, not only to function on their own, but also to make policies in accordance with their various peculiarities. Such peculiarities may likely not be given sufficient attention under a form of political system where power is centralized, that is, unitary system, due to the uniformity in policy formulation and implementation of such political arrangements. Reasons for federalism. 1. Fear of domination. In multi-ethnic state or states, there is always fear that larger or major ethnic group or groups will dominate the others, particularly as it relates to the allocation of state resources. Such fear can likely be reinforced by unitary system. Thus, various ethnic groups will engage one another in rivalry for control of government at the center. 2. Cultural differences. Diversity in the socio-cultural background of the people in a given state is enough reason to adopt federalism. What am I saying? Well, what I'm saying is that people may decide to have a federalist state due to the differences in their languages, belief systems, norms, values, customs, among others, relating from their different cultural histories. Thus, the heterogeneous nature of a multi-ethnic society is likely to demand for federal system to be put in place so that every people, in spite of their cultural diversity, can enjoy substantial autonomy to function effectively as a people. This will definitely create an opportunity for unity in diversity. 3. Administrative efficiency. Decentralization of government powers among various levels of government is capable of promoting effective administration of the entire nation. This situation tends to allow development to reach every nook and cranny of the country. 4. Economic reasons. Inasmuch that it should be the desire of every responsible government to ensure that all its component units are evenly developed, and knowing that these component units do not enjoy the same amount of natural resources, efforts should be made by the central government to create conducive atmosphere for rapid development in all the component units, that is, states or regions. The government at the center will need to assist those states or regions which have less resources to develop through a number of interventions like offer of grants, technical assistance, among others. The government must also ensure that each of the component units enjoys considerable control of its resources. This can be more guaranteed under a federal system. 5. Geographical contiguity. Federalism can be adopted where ethnic groups are geographically contiguous, having history of inter-ethnic integration or economic cooperations, that is, trade relations before colonialism. Such integration enables them to appreciate the interdependence in their relations. 6. Historical reason. There is no way we can talk about the history of Nigeria as a nation without considering the colonial experience of its people. The colonial experience and Western values that the local people inherited at independence are a source of the emergent culture of modern states in Africa. But despite the common history of colonialism shared by the people, primordial sentiments and ethnic rivalry are still popular on the continent, making efforts at nation building less fruitful. Therefore, in such situation like this, federalism can be adopted to reduce inter-ethnic tension in the state and to foster peaceful coexistence among various ethnic groups. In this case, each region will be given its own power to administer its boundary so that each ethnic group, big or small, will have a deep sense of belonging, particularly as it relates to the fiscal autonomy they will enjoy under the federal government. Features of federal system. 1. A federal system is a product of union among various component units, and each of them retains its power according to its independent jurisdiction. 2. The component units, such as states, transfer their sovereign power to a large political entity, that is, the central government, that represents and directs the affairs of the entire political system or country. 3. Political power is shared between the central government and regional or state governments, where each has its own executive, legislative, and judicial councils. 4. The power is divided and distributed between the two levels of government, central or federal and regional or state authorities, and each of them has jurisdiction over various subjects. According to Nigerian Constitution, there are 3 lists that allocated different subjects or functions to be undertaken by each of the 2 levels of government within a jurisdictional interpretation, that is, according to their jurisdiction. The first list is called exclusive list, which belongs to the central government. The second list is called residual list, which belongs to the state governments. The third is concurrent list, which can be undertaken by both levels of government. 5. It does not evolve, but a union that is made. 6. The power, functions, and relations between the levels of government are usually contained in a written constitution. 7. Presence of rigidity of official documents, that is, constitution, making amendment process or processes a difficult task. 8. The ways through which any section or all sections of the Constitution can be amended are spelled out in the official document, that is, the Constitution. 9. The union is permanent and not susceptible to adjustment. Adjustment may come in form of secession by a segment of the federation, which may likely be suppressed by the central government, as evident during the Biafran War, which took place between 1967 and 1970. Merits and demerits of federal system. The benefits of operating a federal system of government include: 1. Fostering peaceful coexistence among the various ethnic groups in a given state by ensuring that political interests of all groups are protected. 2. It assists for even development of various component units and also ensures effective local administration. The autonomy enjoyed by regional or state governments enables them to make their own laws and policies considering their peculiarities. 3. It is the best system of government for political systems with large territories and multiplicity of ethnic groups, racial, religious, and cultural differences. 4. Federalism promotes wider political participation through decentralization of political power as well as duplication of political institutions. And 5. It prevents too much or absolute concentration of political power in the hands of the central political authority, capable of promoting authoritarianism. The shortcomings of federal system are identified below. 1. Duplication of political institutions may amount to wastage of public funds. 2. There is often jurisdictional conflict between the two levels of government, which is capable of undermining the law and order of the state. For instance, the Yaradua government wanted re-election in states where local government elections had been conducted, and postponement where council elections were about to be conducted. Incidentally, several state governments challenged the authority of the federal government, saying that local council election falls under the jurisdiction of state government. 3. The agreement for the Federalist Union lies within the Constitution. There is tendency that in a situation whereby there are defaults in the Constitution, there will be perpetual conflict between the two levels of government. Therefore, in order to address such anomalies, it is necessary to amend conflicting sections of the Constitution, which is also difficult to accomplish. The reason is that written constitutions are always rigid. 4. Decision-making is slow under federal system of government. And 5. It promotes inconsistency in government. This is because states may have divergent interests which cannot be reconciled. Differences between federal and unitary systems. Federal system. Under the federal system, there is decentralization of political power between central and state governments. There is existence of written and rigid constitution. Jurisdictional conflicts between the two levels of government is settled by the courts. Equality of status between the central and state governments may make their policies independent of each other. Existence of central and regional or state legislatures. And there are separate systems of law by the two levels of government. Unitary system. Under the unitary system, there is centralization of power and no regional government exercises power on its own. The Constitution is usually unwritten and flexible. Jurisdictional conflicts are absent because it is only the central government that enjoys political power. Regional governments are subordinate to central government. Laws are basically made by the central legislature, and they have a uniform system of law. Study session summary. In this study session, we discussed federalism, a system of government in which sovereignty is constitutionally divided between a central governing authority and constituent political units, like states or provinces. Each of them enjoys considerable independence and supreme power in its own sphere of authority as provided for in the Constitution. There is no doubt that both central and regional or state governments, despite their independence, have to complement each other in the dispensation of their powers and functions as contained in the official document, that is, the Constitution. There are weak and strong forms of federalism. End of study session 9. Thanks for listening.